As the war in Ukraine rages on, former President Trump has been sharing his opinions pretty freely. So what do Americans think about the European conflict and how things might have gone if a different president were in charge in the United States? The day before Russia invaded Ukraine, a YouTube video appeared online in which Trump referred to Putin as a genius before offering more praise.
Putin declares a big portion of the Ukraine. Putin declares it as independent. I said, how smart is that? Here's a guy who's very savvy.
Since then, Trump has gone on to publicly and repeatedly add that he thinks one thing would have stopped the invasion from ever happening if he was still president.
This horrific disaster would never have happened if our election was not rigged and if I was the president.
Of course, all of this overlooks the fact that former President Trump has had his own dealings with Ukraine. During his first impeachment, Politico explains Trump had been charged with holding millions of dollars in security aid from Ukraine in an attempt to blackmail Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky into investigating Trump's political rivals, including Joe Biden. Former President Trump's supporters have been listening too. The New York Times reports that pro-Russian sentiment has flooded social media, including YouTube, Telegram, and podcasts. Instead of denouncing Putin's actions, there has been sympathy and approval for Russia's invasion. Online conspiracy theories have been at the heart of the American pro-Putin discourse, including many believing NATO is violating territorial agreements with Russia that don't actually exist, per the New York Times. Another popular false conspiracy theory is that Putin and Trump are even working together on the invasion, with the goal of taking down a cabal of global elites over sex trafficking. But like so much of the political landscape in America these days, the 2016 presidential election is what seems to have made a segment of Americans seemingly more trusting of Vladimir Putin and Russian motives. As the New York Times explains, Trump has appeared favorable and admiring of Russian President Vladimir Putin, which has, quote, seeded a more favorable view among Mr. Trump supporters, according to misinformation researchers. They also believe Putin, who was seen as being invested heavily in sowing discord, had found the perfect ally in Mr. Trump. Melissa Ryan, the chief executive of Card Strategies, a consulting firm that researches disinformation, believes, quote, anyone who studies disinformation or the far right has seen the influence of Putin's investment take hold. At the CPAC conference, Trump did shift his tone some when he spoke about Russia's invasion of Ukraine, calling the invasion, quote, appalling.
It's an outrage and an atrocity that should never have been allowed to occur.
Of course, Trump also stuck to the argument that Russia would have never invaded if he had been president. The thing is, some polls seem to show that a large segment of Americans agree. In a poll conducted by the Harvard Center for American Political Studies, or Harvard CAPS, 62% of 2026 polled Americans believe Putin wouldn't have invaded Ukraine if Trump were still president. As it happens, the crisis in Ukraine is one of the first major wars to be broadcast on social media in real time by on-the-ground civilians. As a result, people around the globe are seeing raw, unedited images and videos uploaded by Ukrainians fleeing their homes, hiding in underground subway stations, and desperately trying to access food, gas, and necessities. It's unlike anything the American public has witnessed before, so says former U.S. Army journalist and photographer Daniel Johnson, who explained the new scenario in an article on Slate. The scale and impact of what's occurring and what we're seeing can't be understated. We're watching a massive conflict, the scale of which hasn't been seen on the continent in almost 100 years, rock the second largest country in Europe. From our offices, our porches, our cars, and our schools, we can watch battles as they happen. As a result, Americans are navigating the deluge of both media and civilian coverage of the war, at a time when, according to The Hill, Biden's approval ratings have waned. The combination of those two factors may explain the aforementioned results of the Harvard CAPS poll. Whether or not the results of the poll will have any kind of reflection on American voters is a question we may not have answered for a while yet. Check out one of our newest videos right here. Plus, even more list videos about breaking news stories are coming soon. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit the bell so you don't miss a single one.